Good morning, everyone. Sorry for the delay caused by technical issues to do with the network. For this period, we have four presenters who will be representing Group 4, 5, 6, and 7. Ms. Dennis, Mr. Manoa, Mr. Rudolph, and Mr. Sukundumi. And we'll begin with Ms. Dennis. Please, Deborah, you can start your presentation.
Thank you. So I will be representing Group 4. The question that we are allocated to work on reads, what are the two philosophies of security according to Williams? So according to Williams 2008, the two philosophies of security are number one, power, or rather the accumulation of power. The second one is centered on the idea of collective security, which is defined by the English dictionary as, and I quote, the concept of maintaining peace among all nations or members of a group by making the security concerns of one member important to all members, end of quote. So these are the two philosophies of security according to Williams. So upon explaining the two philosophies, I will basically do a comparison of them. So to my first point of comparison, so from the perspective of power as stated by Williams in page 6, and I quote, security is understood as a commodity that is to be secure. Actors must possess certain things such as property, money, power, weapons, armies, and so on. In particular, power is thought to be the road to security. The more power, especially military power, actors can accumulate, the more secure they will be, end of quote. So the second perspective, on the other hand, that is collective security, challenges the first and stress that security does not flow from power. In other words, a state doesn't have to be powerful to guarantee security. Rather, and I quote, it sees security as being based on emancipation, that is a concern with justice and the provision of human rights. From this perspective, security is understood as a relationship between different actors than a commodity, end of quote. So this is the first point of my comparison. The second point of my comparison, I will basically compare it according to interstate relations, a relationship. So the philosophy of collective security suggests that, and I quote, it is not particular commodities such as nuclear weapons that are the crucial factor in understanding the security-insecurity equation, but rather the relationship between the actors concerned, end of quote. That is according to Williams, 2008, page 6. So in this perspective, the perspective of collective security, states form relationships, alliance, and establish treaties so as to balance the power relations where no one state is powerful than the other, meaning there is an absence of threat. So Williams also stated that, and I quote, true or stable security does not come from the ability to exercise power over others. Rather, it comes from cooperating to achieve security without depriving others of it. End of quote. So on the contrary, it can be said that states in the pursuit of power or powerful states are more secure and have a foreign policy with a national interest driven to gain commodities from any form of connection or relationship they have with other states, and are less likely to face threats. So we can see an example of China. China is in the pursuit of power, trying to expand into the Pacific as well as to the Middle East, as well as United States in its military capabilities being able to assist failed states or weak states or developing nations. So that's the second point of my comparison between the two philosophies of security. The other one that I would like to stress on is the actors that are involved in these two perspectives of security. So the first perspective, that is the accumulation of power. The main actors involved are basically powerful states, plus dominant international organizations and private individuals who have the resource to manipulate situations. So in terms of collective security, the second perspective, the actors involved are newly established states, weak states, or developing states. They are more drawn to collective security in order to be secured in terms of threats or security dilemmas from other states. So you can see that the two philosophies of security basically outplay the two main theories of international relations, that is realism, which is associated with power, and liberalism, which is associated with collective security. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Dennis and Group 4, for giving us a comprehensive and detailed answer in relation to your assigned question, what are the two philosophies of security according to Williams? We will now move on to group number 5, and Representative Mr. Manoa will share with us their answer to the question, what distinguishes international security studies from the general field of international relations according to Buzan and Anson? Stephen, please. The floor is yours.
Recording in progress.
My test. All right. I'm going to represent the group 5, presenting on the main question number 5. I'm going to read it again. It reads, what distinguishes the international security studies from the general field of international relations according to Buzan and Hansen? And first of all, we have to understand some key terms in the questions before answering the question itself. So the two main key terms that we pull out is international relations and international security studies. So to the definition for international relation, according to Stanford University 2022, and I quote, is an interdisciplinary undergraduate major focusing on the changing political, economic, and cultural relations within the international system of the modern era. The program explores how the global, regional, and domestic factors influence relations between actors on the world stage. And the definition of international security studies, according to Williams 2008, and I quote, international security studies is unavoidably political. That is, it plays a vital role in deciding who gets what, when, and how in world politics. Security study is understood as one of the most important subfields in academic international relations, or IR. So back to our question, we found out that one of the main distinguishing factor, or the thing that make international security studies stand out from the other field of international relations is the study of international security studies was once in its lifespan taught as a separate subject from the whole study of international relations. This subject was, however, being merged into the study of IR and taught by IR lecturers around the world. According to Buzan and Hansen in their literature titled The Evolution of International Relations, they distinguishes the subfield of IR as as to be more focusing on security than the original perception of defense in the main field of IR. So we found out that the use of force is the main distinguishing figure or factor that distinguish international security studies from the general field of international relations. According to Buzan and Hansen 2009, in the traditional, and I quote, in the traditional list perspective of international security studies, use of force was and is primarily defined as the use of military force, and the threats states face are predominantly military in kind. It is about war and the various ways in which military power can be deployed, but also about foundation of military power, and thus up to a point about economic and social political structures of the state, and about the cause of conflict in international relations that result in states and other actors creating, maintaining, and sometimes using military power, thus potentially bringing in not just economic, but also environment and identity issues. So, we've identified that the use of force is one of the factors that differentiate international security studies from other subfields of international relations. And this security studies evolved after the World War II, where back then it was the world was focusing on military power. So using the use of force is one of the ways in which it helps strengthen the security of our state. So in studying the international security studies, the use of force is a factor that help differentiate international security studies from other IR fields of studies. So it is about war and the various ways in which military power can be deployed, but also about the foundation of military power and about the cause of conflict in international relations that result in states and other actors creating, maintaining, and sometimes use military power. Overall, international security studies look at how states protect themselves against external and internal threats. Thank you, and that's the end of presentation.
Thank you very much, Group 5 and your representative, Mr. Manoa. I hope the others you are taking notes, and if you have any questions or comments you want to ask during the participation period on Moodle, so you have to post as an audio or video file. We will now move on to the next presenter for this period. The next presenter is Mr. Abel Rudolph. He will be representing Group 6, and he will be answering the question on behalf of the group. The question is, what is the traditional state-centric formulation of security according to Dalby? Without further delay, please, Mr. Rudolph, the floor is yours.
Thank you. On behalf of my group, I'm going to present on behalf of my group, and the question that we are to answer is, what is the traditional state-centric formulation of security according to Dalby? So, first of all, the definition of security varies according to new circumstances or threats that arise and how these threats can be addressed. So before the Cold War and also during the Cold War, a different type of approach was taken in regards to security. So this was when the state was the entity that was to be protected, even to the extent of using military capabilities to counter threats. So in this period of time, military capabilities were used to a very large extent to keep the states secure. So according to Bayes 2001, the precise definition of security is still contested because there's a major disagreement about whether the main focus should be on the individual, national, or international security. So we can say that in a state-centric, it is more focused on states being the primary or main actors, and their theories working within this do not deny the existence of other state actors and their powers. So state-centric tries to protect the state itself and its members or people within the political community, which differs from a feminist argument. So we can say that state-centric creates a simultaneous action between state actors who act upon the interest of their states and to be protected from possible threats posed by other actors. And other actors I'm referring to states. So which is not only through the buildup of military and arms as before, but rather through improved economic functions and innovations, environmental concerns, threats, and possible solutions. So in protecting our state's sovereignty, the traditional method of increasing arms and warfare only heightened the state's stance in looking at its military as a political strategy to deal with structural issues. So this was the traditional formulation of security. So now there are different ways to look at security and different sectors to look at instead of just the security of the state and taking military action. So according to Delby, recent analysis has shifted from the state-centric to the societal security. So now the political dealings are solved directly than by military means, as well as a more direct look at threats affecting the economy of a state and the environment and the society as a whole. I think this is all from us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Rudolph and Group 6 for sharing with us the knowledge that you have acquired from the required literature given. And we also thank all the other presenters as well, including our attendees on Zoom and our attendees on Facebook. Now we'll move on to the final presenter representing Group 7, Mr. Sukundemi. Will be answering the question, what is the Welsh School of Critical Studies according to Bilgin? Ansgar, please share with us what you and Group 7, what your group has, what people have done in regards to the same question.
Thank you. Our question is, what is the Welsh School of Critical Studies according to Bilgin? Okay, before I answer the question, I have to give you a brief. The evolution of Welsh School of Critical Studies. The origins of critical studies as a distinct school of thought go back to the early 1990s. The idea and struggle it feeds upon have been around for much longer. Citizens, social groups and movements, intellectuals, and activists have long called for thinking beyond Cold War categories that have restricted our ways of thinking about and doing security. Examples include the non-aligned movement, whose underlying principle reminded the world that there's existed insecurities other than the United States and Soviet Union standoff. That is according to Bilgin 2008. It's also known as the Wells School or emancipatory realism. The first analytical move made by the students of the Wells School of Critical Studies is to deepen our understanding of security. This reveals the politics behind scholarly concepts and policy agendas, which allows analysts to decenter states and consider other reference objects above and below the state level. The second move is to broaden our understanding of security in order to consider a range of insecurities faced by any array of different objectives. In this sense, students of critical studies do not securitize issues, but politicize security. According to Booth 2005. They do this to reveal the political and constitutive character of security thinking and to point to men's and women's experience of threat, to be able to decenter the military and state-focused threats that dominate traditional security agendas. So to answer the question, according to Bilgin, the Wells School prioritized security as a derivative concept and calls for politicizing security. Basically, the Wells School focuses more on politicizing security than desecuritization, taking issues outside of security agenda and addressing them through normal political process. So why it opposed the idea of desecuritization rested on three arguments. The first argument is strategic. Desecuritization, they argue, would amount to leaving security as a tool with a high level of mobilization capacity in the hands of state elites who have not so far proven to be sensitive towards the security concerns of the reference other than the state or regime. The second argument is ethico-political. The fact that security has traditionally been about state and its concerns does not mean it has to remain that way. When defined by the state elite, the definition of security could include anything and everything depending on their policy agenda. The final argument is analytical. The question of whether it is desecuritization or politicizing security that would help address those concerns is one that must be answered empirically, historically, and discursively. It's according to Alka 2005, page 198, and Bilgin 2008. Thank you. That's from us.
Okay, thank you, Anscan Group 7. So that brings us to the end of our presentation for this week. We've heard from 7 representatives representing the 7 groups who have shared with us detailed answers in relation to the question. So we thank all 7 groups and in particular the presenters for sharing with us what they've acquired from the required readings and other supporting literature. Next week, we will move on to the second week for the second week of the seminar, and the theme will be on security as well. So we have 2 weeks discussion on the theme security. And the 7 questions already assigned to the 7 groups. So hopefully all of you go and have a look and then sit with your group members and go through and provide answers when we meet again next week, Monday and Tuesday. So if you have questions for the presenters who have presented today and yesterday, please questions and comments. Make sure you post as an audio or video file on the discussion forums for the respective weeks and for week 2 for this particular seminar session. So the closing time will be 12:30. It's now 12 past 11. So you have close to 1 hour, 17 minutes. So I will stop here and I'll let all of you go, and I will upload the audio file on the podcast forum on our webpage. But I'm sure you've taken notes of what your friends have shared with you. And if you have any questions or comments, please post on the discussion forum. We also have a few comments on Facebook here and questions. So if you have time for those who have presented, please make sure you respond to questions and comments from Mr. Anare and the other viewers on Facebook. So our Facebook group is not only made up of former students and you people, the current students who are enrolled in this unit, but we also have our acting secretary for DS, Mr. Uwalupomi, or Dr. Uwalupomi, sorry. Dr. Uwalupomi is part of the group as well, and other Dr. Uwalupomi is a security expert in geopolitics of oil and energy security. So he's also in our group with other. Mr. Anare is an officer with the National Planning, and he works for the Foreign Aid Coordination Division. And we have other experts who are also part of the group. I've added Dr. Ivara Ture from ANU. He's also a security expert. He's yet to accept the invitation, and I'll remind him to join the group. So we'll also, when you are free, you can also have a look at the comments and questions and respond via Facebook for those who are members of the group. If you're yet to be a member of the Facebook group, please make sure you send a membership request and I'll add you to the group. The group is a closed private group, so it's made up of you people and some former students and experts in the field of security studies. All right, I'll stop here. Thank you all for attending today's seminar session. Those on Zoom and those on Facebook, you all have a wonderful day, and we'll see you again next week, Monday, for the presentation or continuation of the seminar on the theme security. Everyone have a good day. Bye for now.